Welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Cabinet, both those that are participating and to those who are watching on the live stream. If members have technical difficulties during the meeting, then please contact the Democratic Services Officer on call, who will attempt to assist you. On call today is James Clapson. His number is 577200. It will also be at the top of the chat thread for members if you need it. For those of you who are watching via the Council's YouTube stream, please follow the instructions below the video if there are any issues with the live feed. I would ask participants when you are not speaking to please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone in listening to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I will then make a note and go back to you once the person speaking has finished. Please note that we will be following the usual Cabinet protocols, in which other members of the Council usually only speak once on each item. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business and ensure that you are in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. Also, please note that this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. Please can I ask the members of the Cabinet to confirm that they are present in the meeting when I read out your name. I will ask for the attendance of those councillors who are participating in order to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 separately. Councillor Everett.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
Present, Chair.
And Councillor Yates.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. When I say your name, please can you confirm that you are present in the meeting? On item 5, I have Councillor Wing.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And on item 6, I have Councillor Stuart Piper.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Garner.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors present that wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1?
Yes, Chair, please. Councillor Ashby, could I speak under agenda item 6? Thank you.
Of course. Sorry, just making a note of that. I am assuming as everyone is present, we have no apologies for absence. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? Okay, on to the minutes. Item 3, to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 18th of March 2021, copy attached to the agenda pack. Please may I have a proposer and a seconder?
I'm happy to propose.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you very much, councillors. Unless I hear any objection, I will take these as approved. Which leads us on to item 4, which is our Corporate Performance Refresh 2021 through to 2024. The Council's corporate objectives, as set out in the corporate statement, determine the strategic direction for the Council. Our current objectives span environment, communities and growth. These influence annual operational service plans and employees' annual appraisals to ensure that the organisation is working collectively towards the same goal. Performance management is a key part of the corporate governance process and adds value by helping to ensure accountability of the performance of the Council's services against the corporate objectives. Our visibility in terms of accountability and openness regarding our services is of paramount importance. The availability of the information that we hold and the relevance of the information we record helps our community to understand not only what we wish to achieve, but what we are achieving and how we are achieving it. Relevant and regularly updated measures help to encourage enhanced accountability and continuous improvement. The report presented to us this evening sets out how we intend to refresh our approach to how we both monitor and report on corporate performance, and also includes new performance indicators. This new approach aims to provide the public with clear and easy to access information on how key services are performing, and supports residents' feedback that they would like the council to be efficient, transparent and responsive. I thank all of those involved in this work and the Overview and Scrutiny panel for their engagement and feedback surrounding this process. The panel will continue to play an important role in the new performance approach. Above all, we are responsible to our residents. The way we work, our aims and our goals, and our work towards them should be visible, trackable and transparent. We know where we excel and where we need to improve, because we are involved in the systems every day. Effective communication relies on finding means and methods to make systems and information as easy to access for those unfamiliar with the systems as it is for those who are deeply involved in them. I believe that these measures indicate our desire to do so and help greatly towards that aim. I move that Cabinet note the report. Do I have a seconder?
Yep, happy to second.
Thank you very much. Unless I hear any objection, I will take this as approved.
Can I speak, Chair? I've put a note in the chat.
Oh, yes. Sorry, surely. Of course.
I know it's difficult to follow because I've been in your I just wanted to say really that I welcome these new methods of showing the information, and I think it's very encouraging that residents will be able to access information on a dynamic basis and in a more meaningful way. I think it's much better than just reporting quarterly to committees. And overall, I think this is a good piece of work, and we should thank the officers for all the time and effort that's gone into devising it. I'm sure that it'll evolve over time, but I think it's good and I welcome it, and I should certainly be supporting it tonight. Thank you.
Can I speak as well, Chair, please?
Of course.
Yeah, and 100% agree with what Councillor Everett said there. I think from my side, as the Cabinet Member for Community Wealth Building, it's good to see that we'll have a performance measure on that specific item. And I believe it won't be ready until later this summer, but we will have a kind of indicator about how much of TDC spend is spent locally, which is great to see. And on top of that, the number of trees planted, greenhouse gas emissions, and pollination statistics and data on that. I think that's really useful, and it's the right direction we should be going. So yeah, fully support what's gone on there. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alban, I believe you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't want to repeat what my two colleagues have just said, but I think it's what's been important as well, and we shouldn't go on without saying it, is the overview and scrutiny input, and I think which have been taken on board. So I'm very pleased about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you everyone for your contributions. And that leads us on to item 5, which is the procurement of the works at Royal Crescent, Ramsgate. The council owns 2 buildings within the historic Royal Crescent, situated in St Augustine's Road, Ramsgate. This block overlooks the sea and the Westcliff Promenade. These Regency buildings are considered to be of significant heritage value and are also of significant financial value, with one flat currently listed for £500,000 and are Grade 2 listed. The 2 buildings owned by the council are numbers 4 to 515 and 19 to 23 Royal Crescent. The buildings are divided into 16 and 6 flats respectively, of which 12 are tenanted and 10 were sold as leasehold under the right to buy legislation. Before beginning, I think it is important for members to note what exactly is being requested and what is being moved. There are 4 recommendations within this report. That the first 3 are essential for the safety of tenants and leaseholders and need to be actioned quickly is, I think, undeniable. These 3 items form the main body of this recommendation and have to move forward in order for works to begin. So to refresh, Cabinet is being asked to agree to the letting of the contract for the structural works and passive fire safety works at Royal Crescent, Ramsgate, as detailed in this report, subject to the approval of the required budget by full council. The slippage of £800,000 from the current 2020 through to 21 HRA capital programme against expenditure on this project during the financial year 2021 through to 22. And to recommend to full council that the additional budget requirement of 1.978 million be allocated to the HRA capital programme from the HRA major repairs reserved for the financial years 2022 to 23 and 2023 to 24. All of these are essential items and need to move forward for the safety of our tenants and leaseholders. The final item is equally significant in terms of our relationship with our leaseholders, and that is to accept the proposed options for the recharging of apportioned costs to leaseholders, as set out in Section 6 of this report. Royal Crescent is a significant and complex building, both in terms of its listed status and all that that entails, and in terms of the works that are required. Listed buildings require particular process, and all leaseholders are very aware of the need for the works, and were also consulted about the initial consultancy tender to begin assessment of the works by East Kent Housing in 2018. I have had several concerns passed forward to me over the past 2 days, and they encompass the following themes: the need for communication and a perceived previous lack of it, concerns over the overall cost of the works, the need for consultation, and concerns that flats owned by leaseholders will become valueless. To address the first issue, I do believe that communication is vital, and that effective communication is best achieved via an in-house service, and that is why I put forward the motion to bring our housing service in-house some while ago now. Some of the communication issues we face over this issue stem from that difference in communication. All I can do and promise on that front is that as an in-house service we will endeavour to provide a first-class tenant and leaseholder service on all fronts. It is also worth noting that we have a very effective tenant and leaseholder group who meet regularly with officers and the portfolio holder to discuss their concerns. Leaseholders are more than welcome to join and discuss any issues that they may have, as residents from other blocks regularly do so. We are committed to communicating openly about this project as it progresses. As well as the previous consultation about the appointment of consultants, we have sent out 3 newsletters updating residents in recent months, and will continue to do this on a regular basis as more details of the project emerge. In relation to costs, we will advertise an open tender to provide best value for money, and will also be using what is known as the most economically advantageous tender approach for this contract, which again should ensure that all costs are as low as possible. To address the need for consultation, this will be happening but requires the decision to tender for the works in order to do so. Without deciding to do the works, we cannot consult on the final scope of works or how those works are to be procured and undertaken. So it is not that no consultation has taken place, it is simply that the initial decision to tender for the works has to happen before the next stage of consultation can begin. These buildings are of significant heritage and financial value. That value will only increase with necessary repairs, and any valuation currently would reflect the need for significant structural works. And that those works are necessary, I don't believe is in dispute by anyone. Although these are high-value flats, the 2 buildings in Royal Crescent are in need of significant programmes of maintenance, including structural and external repairs, fire safety works and repairs. The report details the estimated cost of these works and proposes the allocation of the required budget and a timetable for the completion of the work. The final specification of works, approach to tendering and costs are subject to consultation with tenants and leaseholders, especially in relation to Phase 3 of the works. The approach to tendering will ensure that the market costs are properly tested so that we can achieve the best possible value for our tenants and leaseholders. As listed buildings, the works will also require specific listed building consent. There are a total of 22 flats in the 2 buildings, of which 10 have been sold under the right to buy legislation and have leaseholders. 6 of the 10 leasehold flats are sublet by the owners. The council has a duty to balance the needs of both leaseholders and tenants. The costs linked to these works are something that we are acutely aware of. Due to this, the report includes recommendations to allow leaseholders to defer the payment of apportioned costs, including an option to fix the charge against their property, payable in the event of a future change of ownership, and for the council to consider writing off debts on change of ownership, where the owner has insufficient assets to pay the charge without causing financial hardship. This approach is considered to be equitable to both tenants and leaseholders, whilst at the same time protecting leaseholders from being caused financial hardship. I think offering these measures is necessary, but I think we also need to offer a greater degree of surety in terms of the proportionality of charges. I fully understand the difficulty that being faced with such high bills causes for people, and I am determined that the council will be reasonable in balancing the needs of tenants and leaseholders. To ensure that we are choosing to proactively refer these charges to the First Tier Land Tribunal so that they can consider what is reasonable in the circumstances. Referring these charges to an independent external body for scrutiny and decision is, I believe, both sensible and necessary for both transparency and for the security of both our tenants and leaseholders. In the meantime, the report recommends that we proceed with the procurement of a contractor to complete the essential work, and recommends options for leaseholders to pay whatever charges that the tribunal rules should be reasonable. This is a service that the First Tier Tribunal offers. It will not hold up the process, which is important, as vital works need to be undertaken for the safety and well-being of both tenants and leaseholders. It will simply provide an independent review of the reasonableness of the charges when they are invoiced. Once the works have been completed, these buildings will continue to provide high-quality, affordable homes to the residents into the future. So to recap, the recommendations of the report are as follows. Firstly, the letting of the contract for the structural works and passive fire safety works at Royal Crescent for Amsgate, as detailed in this report, subject to the approval of the required budget by full council. Secondly, the slippage of £800,000 from the current 2020 to 21 HRA capital programme against expenditure on this project during the financial year 2021 to 22. Thirdly, that we recommend to full council that the additional budget requirement of £1.978 million be allocated to the HRA capital programme from the HRA Major Repairs Reserve for the financial years 2022 to 23 and 2023 to 24. And that fourth, the proposed options for the recharging of apportioned costs to leaseholders is accepted as set out in section 6 of this report. I move the recommendation set out in this report. Do I have a seconder?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Everett. Do I have anyone to speak under 20.1?
Yes, please, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wink.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. You've covered a great deal and answered quite a few questions. The leaseholders were recently informed that they would need to contribute extremely large amounts for serious repairs to the building. And
sorry, Councillor Wing, you seem to have become muted.
Sorry. As you can see in the documentation, they are serious life-changing amounts that I think any of us, if we received them, would probably lose a great deal of sleep. Their main concerns you've covered, but I'll go over them again for the leaseholders, are they feel there's a failure to appropriately communicate with and be consulted as part of the process. They have concerns about historical neglect of the building by freeholders, previous freeholders, which will contribute to the present situation. So they feel as if they're being penalised for historical failures. No detailed information on the scope of the work, cost estimates, or what is included in the works. I do believe COVID's probably not helped this situation. So the question I'm going to ask on behalf of...
Oh, sorry, you're muted again, Councillor Wing.
I think it would be, I'm going to ask on behalf of the leaseholders that the item 5 be deferred until a face-to-face meeting can be had with the leaseholders and TDC as the freeholder. I think if you were to give the leaseholders a chance to hear your speech that you've just made, then it would probably allay quite a lot of their fears. So that's my question. Could we delay voting on item 5 to enable a face-to-face meeting with the leaseholders to try and address some of the fears they have?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wing.
Thank you.
To be clear, if we were to delay any kind of vote on item 5, it would delay the significant and fundamental works that need to happen to the block, because the main function of item 5 is to put out the tender for those works to ensure that the structural needs of the building are dealt with and that the fire safety works are carried out. Also, for a consultation to happen with the leaseholders, the tender for those works has to go out. So a consultation will happen as soon as the tender is approved. So the consultation with the leaseholders can happen fully from this point onwards. But we have to approve the tender before we can do that. In terms of the structural works, to my knowledge, because these works were commissioned in 2018, I don't believe there has been significant structural degradation since that point, but I'm happy to take advice from Mr. Porter at this point if he's present. But I think the main issue here is that we ascertain that that the tender goes out so that the works can be done, so that tenant and leaseholders are secure and the knowledge that their building is safe, and that leaseholders are also aware that we are referring forward to the tribunal ourselves, which means that they can be certain that the tribunal is satisfied that the charges apportioned are fair and proportionate. I hope that answers your question.
Could I just request that if it is approved, and it looks like you are going to approve, that somebody could meet with the residents, arrange to meet with the residents. I forwarded the emails as soon as possible to try and begin that process of allaying fears. And
of course. I think I said in my email this morning, I'm more than happy to meet with leaseholders and residents as our officers, and the consultation will be ongoing throughout this process.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Porter is wanting to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of points to that, really. The first one is that once we've got approval to proceed with a programme of works, then the next stage is for us to design the detailed specification and finalise the scope of those works. And we would like to have a detailed conversation with the tenants and leaseholders about the final scope of those works. And of course, that will give tenants and leaseholders the opportunity, if they feel that we've included anything that they don't think should be done, for us to have a discussion about that before we finalise that position. And that potentially has the outcome of that potentially is to give us the opportunity to try and reduce those costs if we possibly can. So the costs quoted in the report are the costs that came straight from the consultants. I think they represent a worst case scenario. And so hopefully we can, by working with tenants and leaseholders over the next part of the project, find a way to reduce those costs. And we have committed already, and we've told the tenants and leaseholders, we've committed to a monthly newsletter as well, in addition to any meetings that people want to hold with us. We've committed to a monthly newsletter, which will continue to do that throughout the project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Porter. And thank you, Councillor Wing, for your question. Are there any other speakers under 20.1 at this point? No. In that case, unless I hear any objection, I will take these recommendations as approved. Thank you very much. which leads us on to item 6, which is the future of East Kent HR. East Kent Human Resources, referred to as EKHR, is a shared service that sits under the umbrella of East Kent Services. It has previously provided HR services to Folkestone and Hythe, Canterbury, Thanet and Dover. It currently provides services to Thanet, Dover and Canterbury, Folkestone and Hythe having left the shared service arrangement shortly after its inception in 2010. HR has been a shared service for Thanet, Canterbury and Dover since 2010. The current collaboration agreement between Thanet, Canterbury and Dover dates from the 14th of October 2016. It is important to note, I think, that East Kent HR is not a separate organisation. It has always been a shared service. Shared services can have their advantages. However, historically, localised approaches tend to work better for areas such as Thanet, as they provide for local knowledge and expertise and on-the-ground action and integration. Many things have changed within the individual councils involved that now reflect the need for a more localised service for all 3 councils. Canterbury decided to bring their HR in-house on the 19th of April, citing changes in the way that they provide for their HR needs, as they are already providing some HR services directly to the Marlow Theatre and to their new trading environmental company. Dover will be meeting on the 17th of May to decide on the same issue. This is a proposal for Thanet to follow in disbanding the East Kent HR partnership and to move our HR services back in-house. There is a feeling across all associated councils that HR is less a shared service and more a shared resource, and that its current form it's not closely enough involved in meeting the needs of the 3 individual councils. One potential benefit of the proposal will be the closer alignment of the individual HR services with the corporate priorities of each council. This proposal means that members will have more involvement in issues such as setting HR policies and procedures which directly affect each council's staff. Members will also be able to have a better understanding of issues which affect staff. East Kent HR staff are currently employed by Dover District Council, and the costs are shared with Canterbury Council and Thanet District Council, so the 3 S151 officers have considered the impact of the change on the finances of the shared services. The S151 officers and finance teams have undertaken considerable work in understanding the split of finances. Their advice is that, broadly speaking, the impact of the service returning in-house will be neutral. It is proposed that staff will transfer as closely as possible into roles similar to their existing roles, and that the councils will take into account as much as possible their preferences as to where they transfer to. This is in accordance with the collaboration agreement that states that either TUPE shall apply in respect of any of the shared services, or, if TUPE does not apply, each council shall still employ any employee who returns to it from a shared service, on the same terms as conditions as applied immediately before termination, including full continuity of employment. It is proposed that the small payroll service and management of the HR software will remain as a shared service, and that this team will remain at Dover. The intention is that consultation will take place over the spring and summer, and the service will come in-house at the beginning of September. I move the recommendations set out in the report. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any members that would like to speak under 20.1?
Yes, please, Chair. Councillor Ashby.
Councillor Piper, please, Chair.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. Where other councils have in-house HR, corporate governance matters come under the committee framework within their general purposes committees. At present, as our HR is managed by East Kent HR, there are no such arrangements in terms of reference to cover this restructure. I note from the report that there is no mention on this. Please could you advise if this has been considered and how it will be handled from a corporate, from a governance issue regarding committee structure? Thank you. Do you want, Chair, would you like us to respond to that question, or?
I think it would probably be most effective at this point. I'm aware that governance and policies cross over at various points, but there is a degree of separation here that I think would be helpful to discuss.
Okay. Ultimately, you're correct. Currently, obviously, GPC is a committee of the council. The role of GPC will be to inform and agree HR policies. The actual delivery of those policies will be the responsibility of head of paid service and anybody who I delegate that authority to as part of bringing that structure back into the council. But it will be GPC on behalf of the council who will be the committee to agree policy for human resources at Thanet District Council. I hope that answers that question, Councillor Ashby. Yes, yes, fully understand that and accept it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Ashby. I believe Councillor Piper was next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Ashby has covered at least one of the things I was going to ask about. I'm just wondering what the average man or woman in the street might feel about any organisation that actually has the entirety of its HR set up in-house. I'm not particularly sure that is a good idea. It would present possibly a situation where if it is run by the senior officers of the organisation, those are the very people that employees may wish to make a complaint about. And I know there are separate systems for dealing with certain complaints, but below a certain level, an employee goes to the HR unit. I personally would think HR should always be handled by a separate company. I note the comment about the switchovers being sort of cash neutral, but it would be interesting to know how much we actually pay for an HR service. And has there been or could there be any discussion, for example, with councils like Ramsgate Town Council, who actually employ an outside company to control all the HR? I think it creates a bridge, it creates a gap between the employees and the senior management if it's handled elsewhere. Those were just the points I wished to raise, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. I believe Ms Culligan would like to come in at this point.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks very much, Councillor Piper, for your comments. Just to say that the shared service is our HR service. It's not a separate organisation. Simply when the shared service was set up, the 4 councils firstly, followed by the 3 councils when Folkestone withdrew, decided to share their services. So they're not actually an independent organisation. So there'll be no difference in simply we will have that service in-house. And the other point is many organisations, including many councils that I've worked for and other councils, have an in-house HR service. It's just a different way of doing the same thing. So it's not a separate organisation. It's our organisation that we delegated to the it's our service that we previously delegated to the shared service arrangement. And that shared service arrangement is managed through the East Kent Services Arrangement, which is itself managed strategically by the 3 chief executives. So it's an internal arrangement that we've simply, done as a shared service, and now we're bringing it back in-house.
And Chairman, could I just add, just to provide a bit of reassurance to Councillor Piper in respect of his concern around how complaints between staff would be addressed. That's very much the role of policies and procedures to ensure that separation where necessary is provided. So just want to provide some reassurance around that. And obviously GPC will have responsible for agreeing those policies and procedures as part of bringing it back in-house. But in any HR service, whether it's in-house or as a shared service or dealt with externally, would have to have policies and procedures that belong to the council. And it's those policies and procedures that are key to addressing any of those concerns that you reflected. I hope that helps clarify that.
Thank you very much, Ms Culligan and Ms Hamer. And thank you very much for the question, Councillor Piper. I believe that we now have Councillor Garner, if I have the order correct.
You do, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Just like to say, I'm certainly not opposed to a discussion about bringing the HR services back in-house. I am, however, concerned about the timing. As we know, there are currently a number of formal processes in train relating to the governance and culture at the council, and I believe this item should be paused until all outstanding issues have been resolved and the recently kicked off review of governance and culture has been completed and reported back to council. I'd also like to add that, as I think was mentioned a bit earlier, the General Purposes Committee recognised last year that it would be good for members to have more of a say in HR policies that directly affect Thanet staff. And I believe that any final decision on this should be referred to and made by full council rather than by the Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, that's more of a statement than a question, so I'm not sure what to answer within that.
Yes,
yes, I'd like to bring Ms Culligan in at this point to talk about the differences between individual governance issues and overall governance and HR.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Garner, for your question. Madeline may wish to comment on the interplay with the Culture and Governance Review, seen as she's been discussing it with Grant Thornton, and we're still waiting for the terms of reference, I believe, to be finalised for that. But any ongoing issues with the Culture and Governance Review, I certainly don't see how that would impact on bringing a service, which is in effect our own service at the moment, back in-house. It's simply a different arrangement. There will be quite a long lead-in time, which we've allowed for to enable as much consultation as possible with the unions, as much consultation with the staff affected, and to enable the staff to transfer into the three councils in as smooth and as painless way for them as possible. So they won't transfer in until the earliest in September. So, there is quite a long period between now and then. But even then, I don't see how doing that, which is basically an arrangement of our services, would be impacted by the Culture and Governance Review. I mean, Grant Thornton, in doing that review, would be able to talk to whichever staff or councillors they wish. And presumably, if they wish to talk to members of HR now or when they transfer, they can do that. So I don't see any issue with that. And in terms of the decision making to bring it back in-house, we agreed with Canterbury and Dover when we were looking at this, that the decision is an operational decision, if you like, and it's a decision for Cabinet, which is why we brought it here. It's not a decision for full council. But does that answer your question, Councillor Garner?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, thank you.
I believe we now have Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to point out this issue about staffing policies and members' ability to get involved in them, because certainly in the discussions that I've had over the last 18 months with other group leaders, the ability of members to get involved in the policies has been quite fundamental. And that simply isn't possible under these existing arrangements under which the policies are delegated to East Kent HR. And my experience of shared services, frankly, tells me that the democratic function here is completely lost. I have attended East Kent Services meetings at which I'm expected to make a decision as to whether Canterbury's theatre should relate to the HR service. I have no particular interest in what goes on at Canterbury's theatre. And I think you're seeing in terms of this decision tonight, which is a decision for our cabinet to make, but actually one of the councils has already pulled out of it. The other one's likely to pull out of it next month. So there'll be nothing to stay a member of, which is why really it's a completely pointless discussion about whether we should defer it. I think that this will be better. In terms of Councillor Piper's comments earlier about what Ramsgate Town Council does, well, with respect, I'd suggest that that's because Ramsgate Town Council is too small to viably employ its own HR service. Thanet District Council, I think it probably, I don't know quite how many people there are at Ramsgate Town Council now, but I would think it must be 25 to 30 times the size in terms of personnel of Ramsgate Town Council, and therefore economically it makes sense for TDC to run its own service. And certainly when I've worked for big organisations, they've always had their own HR function, and that hasn't prevented people raising grievances and proper process being extended. And I can assure you, some of the organisations I've worked for, governance was nothing like as good as it is at Thanet District Council, because in the private sector, sometimes anything goes. So I'm totally supportive of this, and I know that it won't take effect until September. The external review that's been referred to will do its work. It will look at everything that it needs to look at. I don't think it's got any relevance to this matter. And I'm fully supportive of bringing HR back in-house. And I think the council will be better served by an in-house service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. I believe we now have Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Everett has basically covered a lot of what I was going to say. However, I just wanted to let Councillor Piper know that since 1974 until 2010, Thanet District Council had its own HR department as a previous officer here, and certainly as a former representative of the staff at Thanet District Council, I was firmly, and the staff are firmly against the HR being put out to a shared service. And I'm chuffed actually that it's coming back in house. I can't see that there certainly isn't any conspiracy theories that some of our members may have as to why this is being taken place now. This has nothing to do whatsoever with any ongoing issues that are currently taking place. And I fully support this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. To recap the recommendations, firstly, the East Kent HR should be disbanded and the HR service returns in-house. Secondly, that authority is delegated to the interim head of shared services in consultation with the chief executive and leader to carry out all necessary processes to give effect to the decision. Thirdly, that authority is given to the interim head of shared services to sign off and enter into any agreements necessary to give effect to the decision. This includes, but is not limited to, novation of contracts between any of the three councils and any third parties. And finally, to recommend to Council that East Kent Shared Services Collaboration Agreement, dated the 14th of October 2016, is amended to reflect the changes set out in recommendations 1 through to 3. Unless I hear any objection, I will take recommendations 1 to 3 as approved and 4 as recommended for submission to Council. And that, I believe, moves us to the close of the meeting. That concludes the business for tonight's